Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880 and on YouTube at realestateshowOregon.com. Thank you for joining us today. We have a room full of people in the house with us, including this lovely lady here who's Alice Lema. We're both real estate brokers at John L. Scott, and we get together with you once a week to talk about all sorts of real estate related issues. Did you have a good week? How you doing?
It was a good week, but you know, it's still a buyer's market, so we have terminations happening, and that's a, you know, that's one of the ways you know it's a buyer's market. But there's plenty of houses out there, so note to sellers, you know, keep your transactions together.
You don't want to lose them, that's for sure. And remember where we are in that selling cycle. Remember July and August are those heavy months, and now we're phasing in towards September. But still a lot of activity in a very robust market. Guy Giles is here. He's our lending expert from Mutual of Omaha Mortgage. Joined us today, and I suppose you're pretty busy too. What's going on with you? Nice to see you, by the way.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It feels like it's been a while.
It has.
Still really busy. I mean, these rates are insane right now. Obviously, there's a little bit of pressure from around the world as far as the markets go. You know, a little bit to do with what's going on in China. I think that gets blown a little bit out of proportion as far as the whole thing. We've just been on a tear with our economy for a lot of years, and it really needs to pull back a little bit. So, you know, we're seeing a few corrections and just a lot of volatility, especially in the market. So,
well, whatever happens in kind of, if there is a recession, I don't know if there was going to be one yet, but there will be essentially. It's not housing driven. It's not being started by the housing market going nutty like it did in 2008, right?
No. A lot of it has to do with overseas things.
Okay.
You know, and to be honest, I think it's good that we're finally getting some equitable trade. So, you know, I don't mind a little bit of pain going through this because it needed to be addressed for the last 30 years, and it just wasn't. So, anyway, you can kind of figure out where I sit on that stuff.
Well, but there's a lot of, I mean, the economy has been excellent in our valley. I mean, it really has. It makes a big difference. And so we'll see where that leads. Who knows where it goes?
Yeah, and it's fit.
Right? Well, I'm going to say,
we'll see where it goes. Yeah, as far as our markets go, I'm still really convinced that, I don't have to explain that to anybody. You know, California drives our market, and a lot of those people, they're getting older, and I don't think that they want to sit out another recession, even if we do have one. If we have a little bit of a pullback, I think it's going to insulate us, kind of like Ashland was insulated through the last one. I think it'll be the whole Southern Oregon because they're still going to have a ton of equity in their house that they're selling. So it'll be a bargain here, even as prices rise up. So I do think the people will still come, and anyway, I anticipate it just keeping on for a while.
Well, I don't see it slowing down either. I mean, we talk about that all the time.
A lot of relocators.
Relocators, and in your case, a lot of people refinancing because, look, we're back down under 4% for the most part. So I can see people doing that as well.
Now, is it true that you've got some people who bought just as recently as last year they're refinancing already?
Yeah, I'm really shocked. I'm thinking they're calling to go out and ride quads or do something, you know, that we were going to go do and hang out, and then they're talking refinances. And I'm like, well, no, you know, you don't want to just do this and refinance because I'm really not a guy that just churns loans. I want it to be the right thing for people. And it's like, send me a statement, and they do, and it's making sense. You know, we're getting people down a full point easily from where we were at the end of last year. So it actually does make sense, you know. So, yeah, I'm actually inundated with a lot of
guys like that have been the best of both worlds, Alice. He's got people refinancing. You got low rates, people buying new homes. You got it. You got it good right now.
It's actually it's a pretty good time to be doing this job.
It's even better. He admitted that for us. No, it is good. I mean,
when you got a daughter with horse problem, it's good to have an income. So
yeah. Well, a guy who does not have a horse problem is the sheriff. Nate Sickler is joining us today, and you got football issues with you and your family, I suppose, more so than horse issues.
Yeah, you said football?
Yeah, football issues.
Yeah, the little guys just started last week, so we're in our second week of practice. Both my boys are playing, and I'm coaching one team full time and then helping on another team. So I stay plenty busy in the evenings for sure.
That's amazing. Well, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
When you were here last time, I know you were in the midst of the jail. You were trying to get support for that, and we were talking a lot about cannabis issues and those problems. Let's start with the second one here. What's happened with cannabis? Seems to have just disappeared. It just seems disappeared. It's gone for most of our site, but I know it hasn't. So what's happening with that and the issues that were out there about noise and this and that we talked about last time?
Well, I think our complaints are down a little bit with regards to cannabis because now we've kind of moved into a lot of the hemp market. We've gone to, I think, between 8,000 and 9,000 acres of hemp in Jackson County, which is up considerably from where we were
a
year
quite
ago.
a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were, I want to say 1,000 acres or something.
Like 1,000 acres a year ago.
So that's been the big change. I think some of the cannabis farmers or growers have gone now to hemp. Have switched. And so, but there's still plenty of work to be done with regards to marijuana. We have our IMET team, which is our illegal marijuana enforcement team, which was paid for mostly by grant money from the state, from marijuana revenues, to trying to curb the illegal or the illicit black market with regards to marijuana. And they've been extremely busy. They've been doing a lot of work. So there's not a shortage of work. In fact, if anything, this team has discovered, how much work there is, because they're actually out there, enforcing the law.
That's surprising.
Was there that much illegal going on? There was that much illegal
going
on.
I have some numbers I can give you real quick. So, since last September, we got the grant, I think, awarded in June or July, and then it took a couple months to get a couple guys assigned, because this is a joint effort between the Medford Police Department and the Sheriff's Office and the DA's office. But since last September, they've taken, roughly almost 100 cases. They've done about 50 or so search warrants. They've made over 50 arrests. They've seized over 100 guns. They've seized about 20,000 pounds of illegal marijuana product.
20,000
pounds.
In our area.
Just in Jackson County.
And just in Jackson County. That's shocking.
And
wow.
And then they have seized, I think, well over $1 million. So they've been pretty busy.
And these are from illegal grows, illegal sites.
Yeah, well, it could be a combination of either just a illegal grow site, or it could be somebody who has a legal grow site but then is engaging in the black market. That means transporting out of state or doing those things.
Have they disappeared? Are there fewer of them today now? I mean, or are they?
Well, I don't think we ever knew how many there were. I mean, there was a lot of, visually, everything was marijuana before hemp, or not everything, but a lot of it. And now we see a lot of hemp. So now it's just trying to figure out the balance between, trying to now work with the hemp industry as well as the marijuana industry, and that's going to cause different challenges for the individuals that regulate the hemp industry, because it grew by 800% in a year, and as with marijuana, when that came in after Measure 91 passed and it was legal recreationally, there was no infrastructure to really support that or to regulate it, and so it just kind of went kind of wild. And of course then we saw all the complaints, all the criminality associated with it, upset neighbors, people trying to figure out how to now live with this new industry within our valley, and so it caused a lot of issues.
And it caused issues. It affected the rural prices.
Yeah.
It affected real estate in a big way.
They spiked. The cannabis spiked.
Well, cannabis spiked it, but remember, in our statistics that we've had, rural properties for over a year have lost value.
And that's because the spike is over.
Directly related to after the shoot up, everyone's going to go buy land to grow cannabis. It fell and prices dropped, and they're just now maybe coming back stabilizing a little. Do you think?
In fact, you can buy a really nice grow operation now that was not available before, because they're fully developed, and the people who could not make it in the business in the beginning are now selling those properties. We didn't even have that before.
And we've seen some abandoned.
Yes.
They just left. And things like that. So it did have an effect on the rural properties, much more than obviously than urban, that you can imagine. So there was quite a deal going on there for a while.
Yeah, I imagine, and I'm not an expert in the real estate market by any means, but I imagine EFU land that maybe went up in price, and those surrounding it that may have experienced the drop. The stats don't show that. Stats actually show a decline in value in these places. But what we're seeing now, the difference between cannabis, and give me this right there, between cannabis and hemp, is that the cannabis people came in and bought property. Yeah. The hemp people are leasing property. Yeah. They're not buying it.
But we're watching to see if in the next season, if they have a good profit, if they are going to enter the market as purchasers. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Well, probably what he said kind of speaks to it too, though, because if you're right next to a 2,000 acres of hemp, you don't necessarily want to buy that house right there either. So that could,
I think you're going to see all sorts of Well, issues come up with it. I mean, we had someone go with all the plastic, and what do you do with that? Because it affects your neighbors, which affects prices and views and things like that.
From what I understand, both Nate and I are on the marijuana advisory board. At least the responsible ones, a lot of them are going to switch over and start using straw. And that was another thing that came up in the meeting is, if there's no farmers growing any straw or any alfalfa or anything, I don't know where you're going to get that, or if it would be economically feasible. But hopefully some of the plastic thing will go away at some point. I don't think that's a long-term. Yeah, I mean, it could be.
Okay, do you want to make some money? I'll keep telling Alice this. We want to make some money. Let's go get some. Let's drive to Plush. Let's pick up some hay and sell it over here in the Rogue Valley, because the price of hay is going absolutely through the roof because the fields have been plowed up for hemp. And so we're losing that particular product now. And so like everything in real estate related is supply and demand.
Yep.
And this is what we're seeing that right now, and that's going to have an effect on a whole lot of people. You especially, you have horses. You got to have hay.
I know. It's going to be a challenge.
Where's the straw going to come from and things like that? So it's not there. But let me ask you this, Sheriff. The hemp producers, I mean, they use, I don't know how much, if they use chemicals or whatever they do, but is that an issue with anything in terms of dropping things into water and things like that? Or have you heard anything about that at all?
Well, I know there was some issues with marijuana cultivation and chemicals that were used in some runoffs into creeks and some other things that were not ideal. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm not as familiar with the growing process of hemp and how that looks. I know the fields are much larger and they seem to be more, more farm-like, right? And so I don't know if they have the same issues as the marijuana cultivation. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
You haven't had any complaints about those or anything?
Yeah, and generally speaking, depending on what it was, those complaints might not go to my office because they might go to DEQ or some other agency, and we might not have direct involvement. Code enforcement deals with those with the county, and they do have a large number of complaints they deal with year in and year out regarding to cannabis and probably now hemp. But they're extremely busy trying to keep up with those complaints. Their volume went up, the same as ours as far as calls for service. They went up substantially when recreational marijuana became, came into our valley, and they didn't have quite the resources that they would need to handle all that. Just like everybody trying to play catch up, OLCC was behind, we were behind, code enforcement was behind. So it really created this market that didn't really have any checks and balances. So it was difficult.
But it was also new and it happened so fast.
And isn't it good to hear that it's improved?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really good to hear you say that you've got things at least.
Yeah, well, we have the capability
we're under control
now.
More.
Yeah, so we have, I think when the state, went down this road, they just didn't quite look at the potential impacts.
They weren't quite ready.
Think it all the way through.
Yeah, and they thought, well, if someone puts up a grow that's illegal, doesn't register with the state, doesn't go through the licensing procedures, that the sheriffs or whatever agency will just go out and take care of it right away. But it becomes a very complex issue when you start mixing, medicinal or medical marijuana grows, and then you have recreational grows, and then you have the black market grows, and the average street cop or deputy, doesn't have the training or the resources or the time to go to every grow site and start doing full inspections.
And nor should it be your responsibility to do that. We got a break coming up here today. We're going to come back here. Hold all your thoughts because we got a lot more to talk about today. We're with Sheriff Nate Sickler, of course, Jackson County Sheriff Guy Giles, our lender from Mutual of Omaha Mortgage. Pete and Alice, we're coming right back with more on the Real Estate Show after this. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880 and on YouTube at realestateshoworegon.com. Welcome to our show today. We're talking broad base of discussions today with Sheriff Nate Sickler, sitting right there in the uniform. Guy Giles from Mutual of Omaha Mortgage, our resident lending expert here on the show, and Alice Lema. We're all here to talk about all this kind of interesting stuff in the real estate market here at the end of August. My goodness, summer. It's been a great summer. We only had that 1 week roughly of smoke.
Yeah.
It must have made your life a little bit easier, I would think.
This summer has been a blessing compared to the previous two for sure. The last 2 summers we had country crossings in, which, had some benefits for the community, but it also was a lot of work for the sheriff's office. We didn't have that this year in July. And then, of course, we've been very fortunate not to have the catastrophic wildfires plaguing our valley like they did the last 2 years. So it has been a relief this summer compared to the last two. So we geared up for a similar summer, and we've been pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I kid you when I say your name's not on the news, that much, and I know you like that, but. Tell us about what are you going to do? What do you got coming up? Are you still doing the jail thing? I know that's a big issue with you. So tell us where you where that is right now.
So we went to the cities, back in what was it? I think we got through in March, or no, I'm sorry, May, and we were. 2 cities decided that they didn't want to pass a resolution to move the issue to the voters, and so. We regrouped because 9 cities said they did, and I think my position is that we've had a jail that hasn't served our community for a lot of years, and it's caused some issues, caused some livability issues, as you know, and those things do affect the real estate market as well.
It does.
If there's crime rates that are soaring and there's livability issues, those can impact housing and even values of housing.
I'm going to just stop you there.
Well, and safety.
I've heard. See, if you've had this. Especially people from California, just say that they've been. I've heard more about asking about crime rates in neighborhoods this maybe the last year. Or
well, they're going online and checking the stats.
Yeah,
they're asking about that. People are.
It's becoming a thing.
So that's where you're saying that has that effect.
Yeah.
So
when I took over in 2017, we had to close 60 beds of our basement due to staffing, training, and
60.
budgeting. Yeah, 60 beds, which for us, that's 20% of our jail capacity. So our focus was to get that open, and then we implemented some programs. And so I'm pretty happy to report in 2018 crime rates went down in Medford, went down in Ashland, and in the county. And the county levels were smaller than the cities, but the trend was that crime rates decreased, which is a great thing. And we were able to open the basement, do some programs, and I think that had a direct correlation and some good police work by our city agencies and the sheriff's office. But those combined efforts reduce crime rates. And, of course, the economy impacts crime rates as well. So, seeing the positive effect of, more bed space, some effective programming and whatnot, gives us hope that a bigger jail where we can hold individuals, because we're still forced releasing. This year, we're on target about 4,000 forced releases, and that means people who are released prior to when necessarily a judge feels like they should be.
4,000.
4,000. Well, in 2016, I think we were near 8,600. So
wow,
a pretty big improvement. We've cut it in less than half. So we're happy with those numbers, but it doesn't alleviate the need. We still would like to be at 0 forced release. That should be our goal. As a sheriff, that's my goal. And so we're going to go back. I've started basically a very large committee. I don't think it's necessarily an advisory committee or a steering committee, but it's kind of a big think tank group where we bring in members of the community, different disciplines, criminal justice system, city councilors, mayors, just people involved with this process who have that want to learn more about the criminal justice system, because I think 2 of the cities, we just didn't have enough time to potentially explain to them all the things that are going on in the county for them to make an informed decision as to what they wanted to do. So we've gone back, and we're going to try to take some ideas that come out of this committee and see if we can incorporate that too to make the plan more desirable. But my goal is to get this back in front of the voters, hopefully in May of 2020.
Next May. To me, your arguments are good. Your biggest challenge is financing, isn't it? I mean, isn't that the big thing? Yeah. It's the property tax.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what comes down to where you live and what you think about these issues.
Sure.
I think more so. I think people don't take that into consideration as much as you do. Yeah. It's about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and also, I'm not a fan of taxes, but Oregon does not have a sales tax. And so every time the state needs or wants to do something, it becomes a burden to the people who own real estate. And it doesn't seem quite fair. So
well, and and I look at this, and I've had conversations with my wife about this because she's in the real estate market, and it's like, when you look at our property, when you look at your community, is you got to make investments into your community and into your property. And if we have high crime rates or we have livability issues that we can't solve because we don't have the infrastructure to support the valley, what do you do to to invest into your own properties and your own community. And, unfortunately, there's not another means in Oregon at this point to collect monies to pay for a big project like that.
For those, is that
but it is the way. And so my goal isn't, I'm going to be happy if we get it to the voters, right? And then the people get it to decide. And if they decide that this is not something that they're wanting to do, we put a lot of effort. So, on one hand, you'd be disappointed they go through, but it's more important to give the voters the option. And if they decide that this is how they want to spend their money as to investing in a new facility that will hopefully increase safety, reduce crime, and solve some of our issues within the criminal justice system, that in turn is a good investment for them in the future and time moving forward.
And I'm more apt to vote for them if they're not high, dollars per thousand increases. I'm more apt to vote for it if it's less, more modest kinds of things.
But it's also a good use of our voter money, and we get at least we get a chance to say not every, law that comes out of Oregon did we get to vote on. So good for you to get in front of the voters.
Yeah, I mean that's a monumental effort.
Yeah.
And it's a good use of our money.
Did you ever think you'd be doing that kind of thing? I mean, this is like public relations 101 of having to get stakeholders, and this is how you get something done today in our democracy. Is exactly what you're doing to tell people about that. And this always comes down to everything, like in real estate, everything comes down to the final dollars, doesn't it?
Sure. Yeah. And that's the big thing, if we could figure a way to do this without going to the taxpayers, we'd have done it.
Yeah.
But when you look at operational costs, those are our big costs, and they're ongoing. The building cost, even if you had enough money to pay for the building without going to the voters or the taxpayers, you would still need money to operate said jail because there's an increase and they're expensive to run. So the county has agreed to use, when we were at the table before, they agreed to put up $66.5 million out of reserves to pay for this project to lessen the burden on the taxpayers and the homeowners. So that was I think a good faith move to say, hey, this is important to the county. We're going to spend a lot of our reserve money to do this, and
kind of put some of our money where our mouth was.
Yeah,
and I think that's good.
Yeah,
and I think you're thinking of that because that really is an effect. Especially for newcomers. If we have 40% of real estate sales are people moving here from some other place, year after year after year, that's a lot of new people.
And some,
they don't know anything about our issues like that.
Yeah. And a lot of them are older. A lot of them are over 55, and they're super concerned. Not that younger people aren't also, but that's one of the things they're checking when they call up and say, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I want this kind of a crime rate or lower.
Yeah,
they have a number.
Yeah, no, and
I know.
So, and if we could get that money for the jail, then that will help Jackson County be more livable, more desirable.
For 5 years before I was a banker, and I was working for community justice and studying criminal justice at SOU, and literally these criminals, they make poor choices, but they're not dumb. And if there's not enough beds, that word gets around, and then just more bad things happen. And honestly, as far as investments goes, this is one of the better ones for sure. I mean, it's just it'll help out the whole valley.
Well, if we want a strong community and a strong real estate market for everyone, you're right. You have to have these kinds of things. And look how it changed in Josephine County when they passed that police levy. Remember that a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Because people were freaked about safety and all these kinds of things there, and that's kind of subsided. And they cost some money to do that. But
and the property values were lower.
And look what the market has done there since then.
It's gone up.
You can't even buy anything there. The rental rate in Josephine County, everything. It's just because that has come back. People feel safe again, and they're willing to buy and spend money there. Really, I think that's true.
And for me, having worked in the system for 20 years, the criminal justice system, for me personally, and not to make slight of a tax increase, because we do get taxed a lot. We do get taxed with everything, and that's the default as well. Have the people pay for it, and so I don't necessarily prescribe to that. But when I look at this, for me personally, it's a no-brainer. I'm like, I see this stuff every day, and for the cost of the average taxpayer, I want to say it was like $170 a year or something.
So $200 a year, something like that.
Yeah.
Per person.
And you look at that, and it's 80 cents a day, or whatever it is, 90 cents a day. Yeah. It's not something that we can't plan for.
It is, and you're right. And yet we see people in our world who are on fixed incomes and Social Security where that does mean something.
Sure.
And so it's really tough. And I don't envy you having to do that.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's what we
probably
want all your life.
Probably the benefit to the property values would outweigh that a lot. I talk to people and do math a lot of times as far as, are we looking at a 3.5% rate or a 3.625% rate? And once you really figure out, the extra just $4 a month or a week that made the difference. If you looked at now you own a house, it's appreciating it a lot more. I think that the property value is going up because of this. Like you said, I hear that too. Hey, there's all kinds of crime in your area. Well, we're on I-5. You're going to have a certain amount just geographically from that, no matter what. I wouldn't feel unsafe about my daughter walking anywhere, around here because we have great law enforcement, and to have something to do after you kind of hook them up, it'll do wonders for our property values, way more than what a little bit of a tax increase will do.
And it's long overdue. It really is long overdue.
Yeah, and that's another consideration. As property values tend to go up, and without a recession, and construction costs go up in that as well. And, and so, when you look at the project size of something that we're looking at, you're looking at a 5% average increase per year. And, eventually that building will need to be replaced. I mean, it can't last forever. And so, one thing we give out is in 20 years, this project won't cost $166 million. It's going to cost $332 million based on average market value. So, time is important because it does cost more money the longer we wait.
I was a kid when they opened the jail down in Medford, downtown, and they touted it as remember, it was a big thing. It's going to serve our community for years. Well, those years are now pretty much up.
Well, yeah, it's
because we've grown. That's one of the things we've grown. I remember hearing projections. Jackson County is going to double in size over a period of years. Well, we haven't quite done that, but we are growing. Aren't we? I mean, we are going to grow, and it's not going to stop. We've got a break coming up here. We got one more segment to go. Interesting conversation that you're having, because it really affects everybody, and more than you think.
Livability has a value,
and we talk about that all the time. That's why people come here. And it's safe, and we our law enforcement is good, and those kinds of things. Anyway, we got one more segment to go. The Real Estate Show. Check out any of our past shows at realestateshoworegon.com, and we're coming right back to KCMX right after this. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880 and on YouTube at realestateshoworegon.com. Pete Belcastro and Alice Lema here with you today. Thanks for joining us here as we end August almost. Another week to go. Football season begins. When Joe Brett was here, that was really a big deal, more so even than me. But we got the sheriff here, who's a football coach. We got young kids playing. So
that's right, yeah.
In his spare time.
And so we go nutty over this time of the year.
Yeah,
it's the best time of the year, isn't it?
It's
fall?
great. These little athletes out there, get to teach them the game of football, but we also get to teach them some, good experiences for life.
Yeah.
Hard work, discipline, teamwork.
And you're a good example, by the way, of being a dad and being elected. I mean, being somebody out there having a tough job and making time for your kids too and your family. That's really cool. Good for you for doing that.
It's fun. It's pretty rewarding. I coach baseball and football and get to take the winter off because I don't know anything about basketball, so that's nice. But we take turns. Some of the parents all chip in here and there. It's good.
Alice and I call that balance. We haven't got that yet.
Life balance.
We haven't got there yet.
Well, but our kids are grown up, so it's a different gig.
That is true.
Totally different gig.
That was actually one of the first things that impressed me the most. You probably wonder, who is this dude out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he wants to hang out or whatever. When I saw you with your commitment, even in the middle of the election, your first one where you're really getting elected, and the family was a priority. You got all your other stuff done, and you're the sheriff now, but just seeing that's a great example for the kids too. So,
and for other people to do this, that you can in fact have balance.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be all or nothing in elected officials or people doing things or coaching or whatever. You can strike a balance, and we try that all the time. We're trying to get there more so. But anyway, here on the show today, before we let you go here in the last segment, I just want to go back to people now on rates and what they can expect now with you, and what are you selling right now? What are the big things going on in your world?
Wow. Well, it's still, I've always been deep into VAs, so we have great programs. We don't charge any closing costs to veterans at all. So
that's
people
wonderful.
are still, still coming to me, and then we do some donations every time to some charities. We're actually just finishing up a program right now for heroes, for law enforcement, for everybody. Actually, you have a great HR lady. I'll have to tell you her name. She got a verification of income for one of your guys last week for us. And she was awesome. But on a side note, but anyway, a little bit of everything. A little bit more refis than I'm used to. It's a little weird because I've been 99% purchase for years and years. And not that I don't like refis, but I always want to make sure it's the right choice. And usually by the time, unless it's one of my past clients, by the time they get to me, they've talked to some person online that's got them so hyped up about pulling a bunch of cash out to pay off short-term debt and turning it into 30-year debt that I like to really, spend more time and have conversations with people if it's the right thing. Yeah. We might drop your payment $300, but if I'm adding 6 years to your mortgage and now all of a sudden you're paying all interest and all interest and not any principal, sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't, or people going into retirement that are saying, hey, I want a 15-year loan, and yes, you will absolutely pay less on a 15-year loan in interest, but if you pay your 30 like a 15, the rates aren't that much different, and you're going to accomplish a lot of the same things. But then if you want to prepare for retirement, I've also had a ton of people come to me and say, now I want to turn my 15 into a 30 so I can get my finances correct. And I'm all about trying to put people into the right loan the first time rather than just, again, churning loans and, doing them over and over. So right now, it's still people moving in. It's a lot of people moving around.
In and around the community.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they can when the rates go down like that. I think that's where a lot of our buyers are coming from.
And we have more inventory. So
more choices.
There's more choice. There's more choice out there for buyers right now. So.
And on my end, because I'm always on the buyers end, it is nice to see them be able to negotiate for a little bit of closing costs or some things that they didn't even feel comfortable doing for a while because it was such a seller's market.
Especially our locals. Our locals are a little bit of a disadvantage when they're competing with cash buyers from California or Washington or Portland. So it's nice when the rates go down, their dollar stretches a little further and they have more choices.
That's where we are. That's good. That's good to know and good to hear. Do you when you talk to people and we got a lot of there's still a ton of first-time buyers out there. Remember, it's 3 years. If you haven't owned a property in 3 years, you can qualify as a first-time buyer. What do they need? What do you tell people that they should prepare to bring to you or share with you to get a pre-qualification letter? What are the documents that they need that you require today?
I definitely need, if you're self-employed, a lot of times we can do it with 1 year of taxes now, but typically it's 2 years. We want to see if you're a W-2 employee, which is most people, or just passive income from being retired. We'd need your 1099s or your award letters from your Social Security, just to document that, 30 days pay stubs, wherever the money's coming from. You can do gift money for a down payment, but we don't want, grandma to just throw that into your bank account. We want that wired straight to the title company. So there's, there's reasons to get in and talk to us before you start, making the moves. But it's just your basic stuff. We don't always need tax returns on a W-2 employee, but it's good to have to see if they're selling cookies on the side or something.
A lot of people are self-employed people.
Yeah, especially in Southern Oregon.
It's been so hard for so many to get loans. And you're making it easier. That's good. It should.
Well, definitely, there are the bank statement loans out there. There are different things. If I can put somebody into a conventional bucket, I'll do that all day long because you're always going to get a better deal going. And by conventional, the ones that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, buy, the ones that are under $484,000. You're going to get a better deal. So there are options for different people. I mean, you can buy an investment property with no income, no assets. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you got to have the down payment, but they're figuring that the place will pay for itself. So there's some strange stuff out there, but nothing strange like it was in 2006. Right. So we're doing common sense lending, but finally easing up on some of the things that do make sense.
Still need 20% down to have no mortgage insurance, correct?
That is correct, but there are some ways to finance it in. Like I did one for some people the other day. Their mortgage insurance would have cost them $163. Actually, this was yesterday. And instead, we financed in that. And if you have a good credit score, it's a lot more attractive. So for an extra $40 a month, now they don't have any mortgage insurance at all. And chances are, there's especially with good credit, they're a lot more FICO driven now than they were just 6 months ago, at least in Oregon. So
and that's why
there
we
are
got to
some
come
options.
and see you. That's why you got to come and talk to you.
I'm about
face
saving you
to face.
some money, so I'll do it.
And I really think, when you talk about lending, having a face-to-face conversation with somebody like you is a whole lot better to me than having some online person somewhere that I really don't know and I don't get to see. And
and they just don't care.
I just really have much more success when I can see you and talk to you than I can writing to somebody in New Hampshire who's a lender.
My whole can of soup theory. You could throw a can of soup at me at Costco if I do a poor job, and you can't do that with those guys.
We only have a minute left here. You two are almost out of time. You two are still on this marijuana committee together. I kind of thought you're still active, still doing it, and you don't see. I mean, that's okay. That's good. That's good to hear. That
it's moving in. I think we're gonna talk a little bit about maybe moving it into the hemp environment a little bit, just because it is affecting so many people. And you can grow marijuana right in the middle of it if you wanted to, apparently.
I think you could. I mean, I don't. You probably could.
Yeah. So anyway, we don't even know the challenges that we're up against with this hemp thing yet. Having the right to farm is a different animal completely than the marijuana. So we're just gonna have to see how the whole thing shakes out.
Well, I guess you just got your work cut out for you. Still, you never get to rest.
Yeah, it's just something new every couple of years. We got to figure out how to adapt to.
It's amazing. How just the sheriff's office and what you had to change in your office over the last few years.
Yeah.
By what's happened around us by
but
cannabis and all these things.
Yeah, you guys are remarkably adaptive.
It's amazing. So, Will, thank you. And, good luck to you. And you come back again, visit with us if you're still around this guy here. Okay?
I will. Thank you for having me.
We appreciate that. Guy, nice to visit with you also.
You.
So keep up the good work there and keep busy, my goodness, as well. So we like keeping busy.
Yep,
it
lots going
makes
on.
the world a whole lot better when we're all busy than when we're not. So thank you guys, and best of luck to you as well. So that'll do it for the Real Estate Show. Thanks to Brett Nance, who ran our camera for our YouTube show. He does a terrific job every week.
We'll
see you next week here on the Real Estate Show. Have a great week, everybody, and God bless you all.